The first light of the Filipino morning gently illuminated the modern residence in General Santos City, where Dionisia Pacquiao gazed through the panoramic window at the growing movement of the city her son had transformed over the years. At 73 years old, her fingers trembled slightly as she held a letter yellowed by time, kept for 4 decades at the bottom of a wooden box that had survived moves, victories, and defeats. The fragile paper contained words she never had the courage to speak, a secret she had carried alone throughout Emmanuel's meteoric journey to becoming a world boxing legend. The house was silent that Sunday morning, with only the distant sound of bells from the local Catholic church echoing through the prosperous neighborhood. Dionisia had awakened before dawn, as she always did since the difficult times in Kibawe, when poverty was a constant companion and each new day represented a struggle for survival. Now, surrounded by the comfort that Manny's success had provided for the family, she still carried invisible scars from those years of extreme need, when desperate decisions had to be made to ensure her children had any chance of a better future. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts, and Manny's familiar voice on the other end brought the usual warmth that always heated her heart. He was in Manila, finishing some business commitments, but had promised to visit her that afternoon for a family lunch, as they regularly did since his retirement from professional boxing. During the conversation, Dionisia felt the weight of the letter in her hands, knowing that this would be the day she would finally find the courage to reveal the truth she had carefully guarded for so long, a truth that could forever change how her son viewed his own journey. The decision to speak had not arisen suddenly, but was the result of months of deep reflection about the legacy she wanted to leave and the importance of honesty within the family. In recent weeks, Dionisia had observed Manny interacting with his own children, being a present and transparent father, qualities she deeply admired, but which also intensified her feeling of guilt for having kept that secret for so long. She knew the revelation would be painful, but she also understood that the truth, however difficult it might be, was fundamental for her son to fully understand the circumstances that shaped his early years of life. As she carefully tucked the letter into the pocket of her simple dress, Dionisia murmured a silent prayer, asking for strength and wisdom to find the right words that afternoon that would change everything. The clock on the wall marked noon, and she knew that in a few hours she would be face to face with Manny, ready to break 4 decades of silence and reveal a secret she had protected with the same ferocity with which a mother protects her children, even when that protection meant carrying alone an almost unbearable emotional burden. The preparation of lunch brought back vivid memories of the times in Kibawe, Bukidnon, where the Pacquiao family faced some of the most challenging moments of their lives. Dionisia clearly remembered those days when Emmanuel was just a thin and determined child, running barefoot through the dusty streets of the small rural town, dreaming of a future that seemed impossible given his economic reality. It was in these moments of nostalgia that the weight of the secret became more intense, as she recalled the extreme decisions she had to make to ensure her children had at least 1 meal a day. The familiar aromas of adobo and cooked rice filled the modern kitchen, contrasting dramatically with memories of when a pot with enough food for everyone was considered a rare blessing. Dionisia prepared each dish with the same care as always. But this time, her hands worked automatically while her mind navigated through the complexities of the past she was about to reveal. She remembered nights when Emmanuel slept hungry, and how that motivated her to make decisions that at the time seemed to be the only possible way out for a desperate mother in an impossible situation. The doorbell interrupted her reflections, and Dionisia's heart accelerated as she recognized Manny's characteristic voice greeting Maricel, the housekeeper who had worked with the family for more than a decade. The sound of familiar footsteps approaching the kitchen brought a mixture of joy and apprehension she had never experienced before, knowing that those next moments would mark a definitive change in her relationship with the son who had become the pride of the Philippines. She took a deep breath, adjusted her dress, and dried the tears she had tried to contain all morning. When Manny entered the kitchen with his warm smile and hugged his mother with his usual tenderness, Dionisia felt a wave of almost overwhelming emotion. There was the man who had conquered the entire world with his determination and humility, the same boy she had raised amid extreme poverty, but who never lost his natural kindness and respect for others. Seeing Manny at that moment, already mature and wise at 44 years old, made her question again whether she was making the right decision by revealing a secret that could shake his childhood memories and his understanding of family sacrifices. During lunch, the conversation flowed naturally about everyday matters, future projects, and shared memories. But Dionisia noticed that her anxiety was becoming increasingly evident. Manny, with his keen intuition developed over years facing opponents in the ring, noticed the unusual tension in his mother and gently asked if something was bothering her. It was at that moment that Dionisia knew there was no longer any way to postpone the conversation she had planned, and with a slightly trembling voice, she asked that they sit in the living room, as she had something very important to tell him, something she had kept for 40 years and was finally ready to share. The living room, decorated with trophies and photographs documenting Manny's extraordinary career, witnessed the most difficult moment in Dionisia Pacquiao's life. Sitting on the couch next to her son, she carefully removed the yellowed letter from her pocket, her hands visibly trembling as she unfolded the paper that had been kept like a painful treasure for 4 decades. The silence in the room was almost tangible, broken only by the tick-tock of the antique clock that Manny had given as a gift to his mother years before, a symbol of time that now seemed to have stopped completely before the magnitude of that moment. Manny observed his mother with a mixture of curiosity and concern, recognizing in her expression a vulnerability he had rarely witnessed over the years. His experience in boxing had taught him to read subtle signs and perceive when something significant was about to happen. And at that moment, all his instincts indicated that his mother was carrying a deep emotional burden she was about to share. He remained silent, offering his presence and total attention, the same way she had done during his childhood, when he would come home injured after fights at school or frustrated with the family's financial difficulties. With her voice choked with emotion, Dionisia began to reveal the secret she had kept for so long, explaining that during the most difficult years in Kibawe, when poverty threatened to completely destroy the family, she had made a desperate decision that changed the course of their lives forever. She told him about Rodrigo Dantes, a prosperous man from Manila who had appeared in Kibawe during those dark times, offering financial help in exchange for something she never imagined she would have to consider, but which extreme circumstances made inevitable. The revelation that Rodrigo had offered to adopt Emmanuel, promising to give the boy quality education and opportunities the family could never provide, hit Manny like a direct punch to the stomach. Dionisia explained that she had reached the point of signing the preliminary adoption papers, desperate to ensure her son had a chance to escape the poverty that seemed to be an inevitable destiny for everyone in the family. The letter she held was the response she had written to Rodrigo, accepting the proposal, but which she never had the courage to send, choosing instead to face the difficulties keeping the family together at any cost. Tears flowed freely down Dionisia's face as she explained that the decision not to deliver the letter had been made on a night of intense prayer, when she realized she would rather see Emmanuel suffer by her side than prosper away from his family. She revealed that Rodrigo had waited for weeks for a response, even visiting the family again. But she had lied, saying she had changed her mind, when in truth she had never found the strength to separate from the son she loved more than her own life. Even knowing that this decision could condemn Emmanuel to a life of financial limitations, the silence that followed the revelation was profound and charged with complex emotions that neither Manny nor Dionisia were prepared to process immediately. Manny remained motionless for several minutes, his mind struggling to assimilate the information that his life could have taken a completely different course, and that his mother had carried the weight of this decision alone for 4 decades. His eyes, which had faced some of the most feared boxers in the world without showing fear, now shone with tears of an emotion he had never experienced before, a mixture of gratitude, pain, and deep understanding about maternal sacrifices he never imagined existed. Manny's first reaction was to approach his mother and embrace her with an intensity that surprised them both. A hug that contained decades of unexpressed love and a silent recognition of the sacrifices she had made to keep the family together. At that moment, he understood that his journey from the dusty streets of Kibawe to the most prestigious rings in the world had not been just the result of his determination and talent, but also the consequence of a courageous decision his mother had made on a night of despair, choosing love over opportunities, family over financial security. While processing the implications of that revelation, Manny began to understand aspects of his childhood that had never been completely clear. Moments when he noticed his mother watching him with special intensity, as if she were memorizing every detail of his presence. He remembered occasions when Dionisia seemed especially protective, refusing help offers from strangers that could have temporarily improved the family's financial situation. Attitudes he at the time attributed to natural distrust, but which now gained a much deeper and more personal meaning. The yellowed letter that remained in Dionisia's trembling hands represented much more than words never sent. It symbolized the moment when a mother chose to trust in love and family unity instead of accepting an apparently logical solution to her financial problems. Manny asked to read the letter, and each handwritten word revealed the anguish of a woman who was willing to make the supreme sacrifice for her son's good, but who at the last moment found strength to choose a more difficult path, yet more authentic to the values she wanted to transmit to her family. The gradual understanding that his entire life had been shaped by that decision not made brought Manny a completely new perspective on his journey. He realized that every obstacle overcome, every victory conquered in the ring, every moment of glory he had experienced, everything had been possible because his mother had chosen to bet on the strength of family instead of accepting an apparent ease that would have separated everyone forever. The gratitude he felt at that moment was as intense as any emotion he had experienced after his greatest victories in boxing. In the hours that followed the revelation, Manny found himself immersed in deep reflections about how a single decision had defined not only his life, but also the destiny of his entire family. He understood that if Dionisia had sent that letter 40 years before, he probably would have grown up in Manila, attended private schools, perhaps followed an academic or business career, but would never have developed the grit and determination that were born from the need to overcome extreme poverty in Kibawe. The irony did not go unnoticed. His mother's decision to keep him in poverty had been exactly what enabled him to transcend any financial limitation through his own strength and talent. Sitting on the house's veranda, observing the city that had developed significantly after his rise to world stardom, Manny contemplated how the struggles of his childhood had forged the character that led him to success. Each day without enough food had fed his hunger to win. Each cold night had warmed his determination. Each moment of social humiliation had built his authentic humility that conquered fans worldwide. He realized that Rodrigo Dantes, well-intentioned in his adoption offer, could never have provided the kind of formation that really mattered. The school of life that teaches resistance, empathy, and appreciation of every achievement. The conversation with Dionisia continued through the afternoon, with her revealing additional details about that critical period, including the nights she had cried alone, questioning whether she had made the right decision, especially when she saw Emmanuel going through difficulties that could have been avoided. She confessed that she had discreetly followed Rodrigo Dantes' life over the years, discovering that he had adopted another child from a poor family, offering him quality education, but that child had grown up without ever developing the passion or determination that characterized Emmanuel from a very young age. Manny began to understand that his mother had intuited something she herself perhaps could not explain completely at the time, that he needed adversities to discover his true inner strength. Dionisia revealed that she had observed from very early on the way Emmanuel reacted to challenges, not with giving up or self-pity, but with growing determination that made her believe he possessed something special that should not be shaped by facilities, but polished through overcoming real and significant obstacles. The afternoon progressed, and both began to perceive that that revelation, although initially painful, was actually strengthening their family bonds even more. Manny expressed his gratitude for his mother's courage, both for the original decision to keep him in the family and for the current courage to reveal a secret she had carried alone for so long. They understood together that the true wealth they possessed was not in trophies and prizes or worldwide recognition, but in the authenticity of a journey built on solid values and decisions based on unconditional love. Even when those decisions seemed illogical from a practical standpoint, the process of emotional digestion of that revelation led Manny on an internal journey of forgiveness and understanding that surprised him with its depth and complexity. Initially, he had felt a pang of pain thinking about all the difficulties his family had faced, difficulties that could have been avoided if his mother had made a different decision. But gradually, that pain transformed into deep admiration for the intuitive wisdom of a woman who had chosen to preserve family integrity above immediate material benefits. He understood that forgiveness was not necessary because there was nothing to forgive, only a courageous decision to be honored and celebrated. During a walk through the property's gardens, Manny and Dionisia continued exploring the ramifications of that decision made 40 years ago, and both began to identify specific moments from childhood when the positive effects of that choice manifested clearly. Manny remembered how he had learned to value each small achievement, from a complete meal to a victory in amateur boxing competitions, and how this capacity for appreciation had become a fundamental characteristic of his personality, positively influencing his interaction with fans, opponents, and his entire team throughout his professional career. The understanding that his journey had been authentic from the beginning brought Manny a sense of inner peace he did not expect to experience after such a significant revelation. He realized that many athletes and celebrities struggle with identity issues, questioning whether their successes are genuine or the result of unrecognized privileges. But he now had absolute certainty that every victory, every title won, every moment of glory had been the direct result of his own effort and the challenging circumstances his mother had chosen to preserve. This certainty strengthened even more his self-esteem and gratitude for the journey lived. Dionisia, in turn, experienced immense emotional relief upon realizing that her decision of 40 years before had been not only understood, but celebrated by her son. The decades of secret guilt and internal questioning about whether she had deprived Emmanuel of better opportunities dissolved before the realization that she had, in fact, provided him something much more valuable: the opportunity to build his own story through personal merit and authentic determination. Seeing the genuine gratitude in Manny's eyes was an emotional validation she had waited for during 4 decades without even knowing she was waiting. The end of the afternoon brought a new dynamic to the relationship between mother and son, an even deeper connection based on total transparency and mutual recognition of the sacrifices and decisions that had shaped their lives. Manny held his mother's hands and expressed his gratitude not only for the decision to keep him in the family, but also for the courage to reveal that secret, understanding that both choices, the one from 40 years ago and today's, demonstrated the same unconditional love that had been the driving force of his entire existence. They realized that that conversation was not an end, but a new beginning for an even more authentic phase of their family relationship. The decision to share the revelation with other members of the Pacquiao family created waves of emotion and reflection that spread beyond Manny and Dionisia's immediate circle. Jinky, Manny's wife, was one of the first to be informed about the secret that had been revealed, and her immediate reaction was one of deep admiration for Dionisia's courage and wisdom, recognizing that the decision made 40 years before had shaped not only her husband's life, but also the future of the entire family they had built together. She understood that her own children were indirect beneficiaries of that courageous choice, as they had inherited a father who knew the real value of achievements and who never took life's blessings for granted. Manny's children, Jimuel, Michael, Mary, Queen Elizabeth, and Israel, received the story with a mixture of fascination and pride, discovering a new layer of family history that explained many aspects of their father's personality they had always admired but never fully understood. They began to understand why Manny always emphasized the importance of hard work, humility, and gratitude, values that were not just abstract philosophies, but principles forged through real experiences of deprivation and overcoming. The revelation strengthened even more the respect they felt for grandmother Dionisia, recognizing in her a silent strength that had protected and shaped the entire family's destiny. Bobby Pacquiao, Manny's brother, was particularly moved to discover that his family had been very close to separating permanently during those difficult years in Kibawe. He remembered specific moments from childhood when he noticed that his mother seemed to be carrying an invisible burden and now finally understood the origin of that emotional weight she had endured alone for decades. The revelation brought a new perspective on maternal sacrifices and strengthened even more the bonds between the brothers, who began to value differently the family moments and unity that had always characterized them. The news also reached extended family members and close friends who had followed the Pacquiao's journey from the first difficult days to worldwide success. Many of them expressed renewed admiration for Dionisia, recognizing that the strength she had always demonstrated publicly was just the tip of the iceberg of a much deeper courage that had been tested in moments of extreme difficulty. They understood that the genuine humility that had always characterized Manny was not a pose for the cameras, but the direct result of an education based on authentic values preserved through difficult decisions made out of unconditional love. The emotional reverberation of that revelation created a renewed sense of unity and purpose within the Pacquiao family, with all members gaining a deeper appreciation for the circumstances that had shaped their collective history. They realized that each individual achievement was, in fact, a shared victory that originated from a courageous decision made by a mother who chose to bet on the power of family love, even when all circumstances suggested an apparently more sensible alternative. This collective understanding strengthened even more the bonds that had always been the solid foundation on which Manny built his extraordinary career. The months that followed Dionisia's secret revelation marked a new phase in the Pacquiao family's life, characterized by even greater emotional transparency and renewed appreciation for the values that had always guided their decisions. Manny began incorporating that experience into his public reflections, sharing in selected interviews the importance of family decisions based on unconditional love, without revealing specific details that could compromise his mother's privacy, but transmitting the essence of the lesson learned about the wisdom of maternal sacrifices. His message resonated deeply with fans around the world, especially those facing similar dilemmas between material security and family integrity. The relationship between Manny and Dionisia evolved to a level of intimacy and trust that surprised both with its depth. They began having regular conversations about topics that were previously avoided, exploring childhood memories with a new and liberating honesty. Dionisia finally felt free from the weight of the secret she had carried for 4 decades, and this liberation manifested in visible serenity that everyone around her noticed and admired. She began sharing other stories and reflections about the difficult years, creating a precious emotional archive that Manny and his children treasured as family heirlooms. The impact of the revelation extended beyond the personal sphere, influencing some of Manny's decisions related to his investments and social projects in the Philippines. Inspired by his mother's courage in making difficult choices based on moral principles instead of immediate benefits, he began prioritizing initiatives that supported families in situations similar to what they had faced in Kibawe, focusing on programs that strengthened family unity instead of solutions that could separate parents and children. His actions reflected a deeper understanding of the importance of preserving family bonds, even in extremely challenging circumstances. The story of Rodrigo Dantes, the man who had offered to adopt Manny 40 years before, also gained an unexpected resolution when Dionisia decided to look for him to finally explain why she had never sent the response letter. Rodrigo, now a retired businessman, was deeply moved to discover the extraordinary destiny Emmanuel had built and expressed genuine admiration for Dionisia's courageous decision. The meeting provided emotional closure for both, with Rodrigo recognizing that Dionisia's maternal intuition had been superior to his business logic, and that some important decisions in life must be guided by the heart instead of pure reason. The legacy of that revelation became a source of inspiration not only for the Pacquiao family, but also for countless people who learned of the story through the examples and reflections Manny shared publicly. The central message, that unconditional love and preservation of family values can be more powerful than apparently logical solutions, resonated especially with fathers and mothers facing similar difficulties. Dionisia, at 73 years old, discovered that her decision of 40 years before had become a powerful testimony about the wisdom of maternal love, proving that some of life's most important choices cannot be measured by conventional success metrics, but only by the fruits they produce over time through the lives they touch and transform.
Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next cases.